Morning to all of you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here this morning. And I want to in particular thank Elise Ellis from the Attorney General's office who organized and arranged for this whole convening. And I'll tell you why we're here. Over the last many weeks, months, I have been concerned as I seem to be reading each week a report of something that's happened in a locker room, at a hockey rink, on a ball field, at a school. And I wanted to bring us together because we've got to address that. We have got to end this pattern. And I know it's representative of things that we're seeing play out in larger society, but I know that everyone on this call cares very deeply for the health and well-being of our young people. We want them to succeed, and many of us want them to succeed through sports, something that personally has meant a lot to me. And so I wanted to bring us together to take this on. I recognize that right now across this country, we are seeing, and I know from talking to my colleagues in other states, we are seeing a really alarming rise in racist harassment and violence. We're seeing a rise in white supremacy, anti-Semitism, anti-Asian racism, Islamophobia, attacks against immigrants, indigenous communities, attacks against members of the LGBTQ community. And what we see happening is unacceptable. And of course, so much of it perpetrated by adults. But kids are not immune, and Massachusetts is not immune to hate and bias. And as I mentioned, we've seen in recent months that hate and bias in our community is making its way into our schools and into our school sports programs. I'll be the first to say that sports can be an incredibly powerful tool for bringing people together, for bridging the divide that we see too often in communities. We know that from team sports. But in recent months, we have seen an infection of bias and hate make its way into places it should not be. Bullying of fellow students, inappropriate hazing of teammates, racist, anti-Semitic graffiti, or language directed at peers. And I think it presents us right now with a clear opportunity for us to address this, an opportunity to make sure that our coaches and our individuals working directly with student athletes are empowered with the knowledge to recognize what is happening, empowered with the skills needed to make sure that they are teaching and coaching these kids in appropriate ways, and empowered to know and take action as appropriate for accountability. So this is an opportunity to help our student athletes fulfill their potential, help our schools fulfill their responsibility, help people come together to display leadership in equity and inclusion. As I mentioned, I played a lot of sports growing up, all through my junior high and high school years. And I know that those sports taught me so much about hard work and teamwork and discipline and leadership, what it takes to succeed, how to learn from failure. So I know that sports have been, for me, an incredibly positive and safe environment that helped me grow and helped me learn. I don't think I would be where I am today were it not for my experience in athletics. And I want all young people to have positive experiences in athletics. I coach too. I still continue to coach. And I talk to a lot of parents, and I talk to a lot of others who coach or have kids in athletic programs. And frankly, I'm concerned about what I'm seeing out there when it comes to the behavior of certain adults. And I think all of us, and particularly those who are charged with the responsibility of looking after young people, whether it's in the classroom or here, as we're talking about on the playing field, in the hockey rink, on the court, I want all of us to realize what's happening out there and to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to provide that positive influence through sports. And so, as I say, that starts with empowering you. Welcome the superintendents, the principals, athletic directors, coaches, referees, and others in this virtual room. I believe that with the right tools and resources and effort, We can do this. We can build positive, supportive, and inclusive cultures on our teams and in our school communities. And so thank you to those of you on this team, beginning with the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association, and the Massachusetts School Administrators Association. Thank you so much for coming together with me in my office to help support our schools and sports teams in tackling this problem. Today's meeting is just the beginning. I'm excited to announce that with our partners, we are organizing a few things. First of all, a conference in late August and early September, so that we can learn from each other and from experts in the field about best practices to address these issues. We're also going to put on a series of free regional trainings in the fall to be conducted by Northeastern Center for the Study of Sport and Society. I want to say a special thank you to the Center for Study of Sport and Society at Northeastern for your continuing commitment to providing organizations, including schools and sports teams, with the training and resources to build positive environments. You'll hear from them later about their experience and the work they do to prevent and address hate and bias whenever and wherever it might arise. Sports are about teams. Success depends on individual players to work together to maximize their efforts in a way that gets collective results. And leaders are folks who can inspire and push people to be their better selves. And that's why we're here today. So I know these are challenging times, but I think it's up to all of us, everyone on the call today, to help drive our communities forward and to help our student athletes. So let's be intentional. Let's do the hard look. Let's do the hard work and educate ourselves and one another about what we need to do. Thank you again for your participation here this morning. And I'm delighted now to turn this over to Department of Elementary and Secondary Education Commissioner Jeff Riley. Welcome, Commissioner.
Good morning, and thank you, Madam Attorney General. We appreciate all your support in these efforts. My name is Jeff Riley. I'm the Commissioner of Education. We know the pandemic has created extraordinary circumstances for schools, and its impact has affected students, staff, and families in numerous and challenging ways. It's been 6 months now since we reached the critical milestone of returning to schools to in-person learning. And it's our shared priority that schools and districts continue to keep students safe, healthy, and ready to learn. The ways that students, families, teachers, and school staff experience school and school-related activities affect student attendance, learning, and achievement. Schools that have strong school climates foster the social, emotional, academic well-being, and sense of belonging that we want for all of our kids. Over the last several years, we have become increasingly aware of incidents of hate crimes and bias, and of offensive and unacceptable behavior in schools and communities, in classrooms, on athletic fields, and more, across our Commonwealth and really across the nation. Keeping all students safe, healthy, and supported is our collective goal. As part of this, preventing and addressing any bias motivated incidents in schools contributes to improving and sustaining a strong culture. We need more engagement. It's imperative that we continue to strengthen efforts to teach students, teachers, coaches, administrators, and other staff about the harm of hate crimes and bias can cause, and how to prevent and address these concerns. We are proud that the Massachusetts anti-discrimination law prohibits exclusion of discrimination based on race, color, sex, gender identity, religion, national origin, and sexual orientation. But we must continue to work together to realize those goals in productive, positive, and respectful ways. Here at the department, we have a variety of resources that people can go to, and I encourage people to go to our website. Everything from the recommendations developed by the Governor's Task Force on Hate Crimes, the School Hate Crime Resource Guide that was released by the Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety. We have our own Promoting Student Engagement, Wellbeing, and Safety, Safe and Supportive School Frameworks, and our SAFE program for LGBTQ students. We encourage all districts to visit the DESE website for these resources and contact the department to take advantage of available trainings, professional development, and technical assistance offerings to assist you guys in preventing and responding to any hateful incidents. Sports are an important lever. It's a really important release and outlet for our kids, and we need to make sure this is the most positive experience we can have. We're grateful to everybody and your unwavering support and commitment to supporting our schools and districts during these challenging times. And we look forward to the productive dialogue today and in the future to make sure that our kids get what they need. I want to thank everyone again for coming out today and working with us on this important issue. And I want to turn it over to Tim Pavovar, the Baroque Superintendent and President of the MASS. Tim, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. And thank you also to Attorney General Healey and her staff for organizing this event today. My name is Tim Pavovar. I'm the superintendent of the Billerica Public Schools, and I also have the privilege of serving as this year's president for the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents. So as a superintendent, I strongly believe in the importance of core values. These are the beliefs that we hold that speak to the purpose of why we do what we do as educators. In my district, our most fundamental core value, and one that I repeat at every chance I get, is that we all have a collective responsibility for all of our students. And all means all, no ifs, no ands, no buts. I'm sure that everyone on this call has a similar belief in their school systems. Now, in order for our schools to live by these core values, they have to permeate every aspect of our organizations. They need to be present in our classrooms and in our hallways. They need to be there on our school buses and in our lunchrooms. They need to be part of our most private moments and be on full display in our most public ones. And the reality is there's really no place where who we are as a school is more on display to the general public than on our athletic fields. More people will come to a game against your school's biggest rival than to any curriculum night. Your local newspaper has a whole section dedicated to your high school sports teams and only an article every once in a while about teaching and learning. And so it's crucially important that we adhere to those core values in athletics because that public presence will help lead the tone for the rest of the community. Perhaps the best description I've ever heard about core values is that you know that something is a core value by the way you feel when it's been violated. And when we think about our visceral reactions to incidences of hate and bias that we've seen, we know that's true. So if we really want to be true to our core values, we have two charges here. The first is to ensure that we have a culture in our athletic programs that exemplifies those values, where it is a safe and supportive environment for all, and where the actions of our students and our adults, both on and off the playing fields, are consistent with those values. Do our students believe in them? Do our coaches, and particularly those that don't work as educators in our system and aren't exposed to the same kinds of learning opportunities that our other staff members have? Do their actions show it? And do we send this message loudly, clearly, and repeatedly? And if not, what are we doing about it? But we also know that despite our best efforts, there will unfortunately be times when incidents occur. And in those cases, we need to be prepared to respond swiftly and appropriately because how we react sets the tone not only for that incident, but also for the school community as a whole. There are three classic questions that will come up in any post-incident analysis. What did you know? When did you know it? And what did you do about it? This is why it is necessary that there be clear, open, and honest lines of communication across the board between athletes and their coaches, between coaches and their athletic directors, and particularly among athletic directors, principals, and superintendents. This last point is critically important because as superintendents, it may be easy to compartmentalize athletics as the domain of the athletic director and high school principal. But the buck stops with us, and we are the most public faces of our systems. And so if we're not aware of what's going on in our athletic programs, and if we're not taking an active role in addressing issues when they occur, we're abdicating our responsibilities. But aside from those three classic questions, I'll also add a fourth. In taking your actions, was your focus on protecting kids? Now, if there's an incident of hate or bias, and when our focus is on protecting kids, we have to share the truth with each other and with our partners in law enforcement when necessary, no matter how uncomfortable it may be in the moment. Shielding the truth in internal reporting is usually about protecting adults, not kids. And we also need to be clear in our public statements. We know that we cannot share every detail that the public wants to hear because we have both a legal and a moral obligation to protect the privacy rights of our students and in some cases our staff. But what we cannot share in details, we can often share in our tone and in our adherence to our processes. So let me close by coming back to core values. I'm excited about this kickoff event because we are taking a stand across the Commonwealth that we believe in the principle that we have a collective responsibility to prevent, address, and report issues of bias and hate in athletics. That rings true to my and my district's core value about collective responsibility for all, and I hope that it rings true for you as well. I want to thank everybody involved in this for the work that we're about to do. And it's now my pleasure to introduce Mike Rubin from the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, Superintendent. My name is Mike Rubin, and I am the Assistant Director for both the MIAA and the MSAA. I also serve as the liaison to the MIAA, MSAA Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. A number of MIAA and MSAA dignitaries are with me today. And they are Bob Baldwin, Executive Director, Lindsay Von Holtz, MIA President, Stephanie Sibley, MIA Vice President, Henry Turner, MSAA Board of Directors and DEI member, Pat Gonzalez, DEIC Co-Chair, Ted McCarthy, DEI Co-Chair, Charlie Conifrey, MIA Board of Directors, and Peter Smith, Associate Director, MIA and MSA. In the winter of 2014, the Minority Inclusion Plan was approved by both the MIAA and the MSAA Board of Directors. One of the components of the plan was the creation of an inclusion committee to inform the membership on issues of diversity and equity. In the fall of 2016, we established the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, the DEIC. Since 2017, the DEIC has planned and hosted 9 DEI conferences, a youth summit in the winter, and a symposium for educators in the spring. We also have included DEI workshops in the annual MSAA Urban Committee Best Practices Summit for administrators and school leaders that is held each January. The mission of the DEIC is to foster diversity among member schools, athletic directors, coaches, and student athletes by promoting inclusiveness, awareness, and acceptance. The 3 primary goals of the DEIC are: 1, to promote diversity; 2, solicit and foster partnerships to assist us in this mission; and 3, to provide professional learning opportunities and resources which schools can access and utilize to help create a more inclusive space for their students in their schools and communities. In pursuit of this mission, we have a number of ongoing initiatives. The annual Youth Summit and Symposium, which I mentioned earlier. Please note that this year's symposium will be Thursday, May 12th. Please save that date. We have developed a webpage on the MIA MSA website that features upcoming events, presentations, resources, and PSAs. We have also created a database for DEI clubs. And finally, there is our ongoing collaboration with the MIA Sportsmanship and Game Officials Committee to establish the discriminatory incident reporting protocol. That protocol is currently being piloted by the MIA membership for the winter and spring sports seasons. The Discriminatory Incident Reporting Subcommittee has been working on this protocol since October of 2020. We hope that this pilot will enable us to collect data to improve the process so that the reporting form will eventually become an MAA rule in the MIA handbook. The discriminatory incident reporting form policy, as stated in the pilot that was approved by the Board of Directors last October, is: number 1, in order to gain a better understanding of actions, language, and behaviors which can be interpreted as discriminatory in nature, and to confirm their commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, all student athletes, coaches, and athletic directors must take the National Federation of State High School Associations free online course entitled Implicit Bias. They must also take the MIA Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Pledge. Coaches and athletic directors must take the course and pledge every school year prior to the academic year. Students and athletes must take the course and pledge every year as well, and they must do so prior to the start of their athletic season. 2, when an incident involving discrimination, harassment, bullying, or retaliation occurs, it must be reported using the MIA's discriminatory incident report form by a participating school's athletic director or his or her designee. 3, the administration of both schools must notify the MIA within 24 hours of becoming aware of the incident, and the school of the alleged offending party must complete an investigation of the incident within a reasonable time and must forward an investigative report summarizing the investigation's findings and any and all actions taken. The MIA is following up on all incidents to gather data to inform future practice and to make sure that together we're all working to eradicate the awful hate and behavior that has become so pervasive in our athletic space. In closing, I would like to add that anyone who has feedback regarding the pilot, please email me at mrubin@mia.net. That's MRUBIN@mia.net. The work continues. At this time, I would like to introduce the next speaker, Executive Director, MIA, MSAA, Executive Director, Bob Baldwin.
Thank you, Mike. And to each of you who have spoken already, you've set a very high bar, and I just appreciate your words. My name is Bob Baldwin. I'm the Executive Director of the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association and the Massachusetts School Administrators Association. I'm deeply grateful to the Attorney General's Office, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents, the Northeastern University Center for the Study of Sport and Society, and other key stakeholders for collectively coming together to address hate and bias in school athletics. Quite frankly, the number of dysregulated behaviors by students and adults in our schools this year are unacceptable, and it is time for us to come together to promote behavior change that supports respectful treatment of all members of a school community. The MIA exists to serve 32 athletic leagues, 374 schools, and over 230,000 student athletes in the Commonwealth. The MIA is clearly positioned to play a significant role in growing the courageous leaders of tomorrow and utilizing interscholastic athletics as a platform that proactively advocates behaviors that instill respect for self, team, opponents, officials, rules in the game itself. It actually prioritizes our core responsibility, particularly educational athletics, which includes sportsmanship, diversity, equity, and inclusion. School sports provide the opportunity to meet and interact with students from other communities and backgrounds, and it is essential that students and adults approach those interactions with respect and civility. When teacher coaches, student athletes, and game officials choose the privilege of participating in sports, they assume the responsibility for right action. We all need to realize that all young people are watching how adults and students behave on the court and on the playing field. That is why we must all do our part to ensure that no one engaged in school activities feels disrespected, unsafe, or unwelcome in our locker rooms or on our practice fields. We believe that the collective power of positive influence that student athletes and teacher coaches share as role models can be utilized to empower positive decision-making that eradicates racism and all other forms of bias. Let's use the playing field as the platform to create change for the greater good in our society. I'm not only grateful to the Attorney General's Office for convening this call to action, but also commend the coming together of all of the key stakeholders. This initiative provides for us the bandwidth and resources so our member schools and districts are better equipped to prevent incidents of bias, harassment, and discrimination. This call to action to address hate and bias in school athletics serves as a model that groups can come together for a common cause of making schools a place where respect and civility are the norm. While our adult membership administers our programming, our students must always be at the forefront of our decision-making. We continue to utilize our student advisory committee, captains workshops, and other student programs to listen to and to promote student voice in how we adapt and deliver our services. We are honored this morning to have Elise Ellis Wright, a senior at Methuen High School, and Anais Killian, a senior at Cambridge Region Latin. They are accompanied by their advisor, Assistant Director Phil Napolitano. Elise, I believe you're up first.
Hi everyone. Sorry, I've had some Wi-Fi issues, but like I said before, my name is Elise Ellis. I am a senior at Methuen High School, and I run both indoor and outdoor track, serving as an SAC member on this wonderful committee where I get to act as a voice and advocate for over 200,000 student athletes across the state, which is amazing. Is that we're talking about hate and bias, and in athletics, I think it is a perfect opportunity to do that, as we are around different cultures and ethnicities every single day. Being an athlete, you get surrounded by, people who have come from different learning environments, people who think different analytically, and that allows you to take those ideas and kind of take them in yourself and learn from them, but also bring that back to your team and committee. I've definitely learned that when we provide our team with fruitful environments that are very positive and encouraging, that's what leads us to success. And I think that's the biggest thing that we focus on as being SAC members, as we get to be those voices of those who feel like they don't matter when everyone does matter. Everybody's voices counts. And I think that's amazing, because when we take the aspect of realizing that everyone has a voice and everybody matters, we establish this under that is the biggest thing in athletics. And participating in a sport when I was younger, I played lacrosse, and I never really saw anybody like me play that sport. And it definitely made me feel that I couldn't do it, but I had such a welcoming team environment. I felt like when I went on that field, they were my sisters and they were my family. And I think that when we can encompass that, just like feeling of that everybody does matters. And, I will always live by the saying that there is no I in team, because you can't have team success without working as a whole, and everybody contributes to the team's win in their own unique way. And I think that with athletics, we do that. And as SAC members, our biggest thing that we were working on is what we want our footprint to be and what we want to leave the next class with. And we talked about our overarching theme, which was confidence, but we also broke that down into 3 subgroups of peer pressure. And we talk about hate and bias, and I think team culture shines the brightest. Like I said before, there is no I in team. And when we work together as a whole, we are able to contribute to the success. And I think that's the biggest thing there that you can work towards, and encompassing, like I said before, that feeling of love, that everyone matters, that everybody contributes. You not only allow your teammates to have the confidence to walk onto the field, to walk and be like, I know what I'm doing, I'm confident I'm going to succeed, but you also know that they have a support system, and providing each other with a support system is something that can be school sports. You think, well, I have to be really good. If I'm not on varsity, I'm not going to play. Like, I'm not going to have friends. There's a lot that goes with it. But I think that when we encompass that feeling of we all matter, and everyone, no matter your ethnic background, your educational environment that you're a part of, no matter the classes, when you let them know that they matter and, they contribute, I think that is the biggest thing. And in athletics, I think that's exactly how we do that, focusing on that team culture, emphasizing that as a team, we need to have that buoyant, lively, refreshing environment. You allow student athletes to participate and to express how, who they are. And I think that when we allow each other to do that, we learn so much from one another. And, that team environment is everything. And I think that if we can emphasize how we are as team members and, what we contribute inside the law.
I think we may have lost Elise, but I can take it from there. So good morning, everyone. My name is Anais Killian, and I'm a senior at Cambridge Region Latin High School. I'm also a SAC member representative, and I'm also a student member of the school committee in Cambridge, and I was captain of the Cambridge women's varsity soccer team. So as a student, I would like to recognize and outline some areas where adults can support me and my Massachusetts peers when eradicating hate and bias in school-based athletics. Adults should be actively involved in creating spaces that empower student athletes and provide for educational support. So, taking an initiative at my high school, for example, student leaders and I have been able to create a program surrounding student athlete consent education workshops. These workshops are one of the follow-up steps to a student walkout in November regarding eradicating assault and harassment culture. In preparation for this workshop series, 37 student leaders and 22 Cambridge Public School staff members participated in a 3-hour facilitator training. This training focused on trauma-informed instructional practices and structures for successful facilitation. Next week, us students and staff will use this training to lead 2-hour workshops with groups of student athletes in order to discuss the actions and behaviors that contribute to a culture of respect and communication. I share this initiative to serve as one example of how adults can support students to eradicate hate and bias in school-based athletics. Education is such a crucial aspect in having proper culture on sports teams and between athletes. Good environments, as Elise was saying, on sports teams must be motivated by team efforts, persistence, and student collaboration, and it is critical that adults can provide spaces for this support. Thank you so much for having Elise and I. We've loved to serve on the MIAA SAC committee, and I'll pass it back over to Dr. Baldwin.
Thank you, Anais. And Elise, thank you so much for your words. And you are our inspiration. You are why we do what we do. At this point in time, I'd like to introduce Dan Liebowitz from the Center for the Study of Sport and Society at Northeastern University.
Bob, thank you so much, and thank everybody who's on this call. I have a number of my colleagues with me, and I think the first thing that came probably to all of their minds is how amazing the 2 students were that were just on this call, and how that shows the power and platform of what sport can do to create positive culture moving forward. I first want to thank the Attorney General and her team for their leadership and intentionality in creating this initiative. Investment creates real impact and outcomes for real people in real communities, and RAG has always been a champion of the people. We at the Center for the Study of Sport and Society create safe space empowerment education that helps those same people and same communities learn and embrace strategies to unpack unconscious bias, to prevent interpersonal violence, and transcend the microaggressions that promulgate toxic speech. We have done this work with Major League Baseball, the NFL, the NFLPA, at the South African World Cup, with college conferences, the military, police departments, corporations, nonprofits, and school systems locally, nationally, and globally. We had the honor to partner with the Attorney General in a previous statewide initiative, and we are honored again to be here today. Hate is not endemic to communities, but it has sadly become pandemic to the world. Getting proximate to global problems requires local courage and local solutions that can be replicated nationally and internationally. RAG is an athlete who has always had the courage and always had the ability to look beyond local and create global solutions. And we thank her for that. We are extremely honored to be part of this initiative, and we want to be mindful to deliver our curriculum and our impact in a way that is viewed as an impact engine to create positive change, not only in our schools, but in our communities and in conversations in all places that are tangent to them. With that, I want to say how grateful we are for all the stakeholders on the call. I want to say hello to all my colleagues, Carl Barros, Jeff Lopes, Magali Ferruzzi, Tomei Barros, and Lisa Markland. And I want to hand it over to my esteemed colleague, Lisa Markland, who can best explain our history, our scope and breadth of work, and how we approach this work in these spaces. Again, thank you all so much.
Good morning to everybody. Feel very honored, privileged to be here with you all on this great initiative that the Attorney General has found is relevant in this time that we are in. Unfortunately, hate, bias continues to pervade our cultures, and it has disseminated down to our young people, our students who are being greatly affected. Here at the center, we focus on social justice issues, hate and bias, and we use the platform of sport, athletes, to combat that. Everybody here that you see on the screen is a former athlete in some capacity. We use that platform to engage students, professional organizations on these topics of injustices. The thing that makes the center relevant, the thing that makes the center a good leader in this space is the fact that we do not come in to say we are faulting anybody for any of their experiences. Everybody has their lived experiences. But what we do is we allow a opportunity for people to engage in conversations that are not that easy. We don't judge anybody. We make it a facilitated dialogue that people engage and feel comfortable enough to have conversations with us. And that's what this is, having conversations. When people come to the table and talk, we can do much more together than when we are divided and we're not having conversations. Our facilitators are very versed at these conversations, especially with young people and the athletes that we will be, that we have been privileged to have these conversations with. The thing that I think is most important for everybody here to understand on this call this morning is that we understand that it's not just policies that will combat hate and bias, but we at the center understand that it's a heart change. And when you come into our sessions, it is a time of reflection. It is a time of understanding. It is an opportunity to engage in conversations, again, like I said, that are not necessarily that easy for people to open themselves up, but we have been very successful in being able to help people open up to having these conversations. We facilitate, we don't come and tell anybody how they're supposed to feel or think, and that's what has made us be very successful at what we have done. We are, again, like I said, so excited in a sense to be able to have the opportunity to speak with so many stakeholders, so many of the people who have these conversations or should be having conversations with our young people. I am so happy with Cambridge Written Latin and how they just explained how adults actually can help them be successful. And at the end of the day, that's what our trainings do. Athletes know, and we know that in sport, it takes repetition. So this is not something that can happen one time. This is something that by reps, you get better. And here at the center, we believe in reps. The most reps that you get at this, the better that the behaviors will start to change, the more that we'll start to move the pendulum from one way to the other. So with that, I want to again say thank you to everybody who has engaged in this endeavor. And I would like to turn it over to Abby Taylor from the Attorney General's office.
Thank you so much, Lisa and Dan. And thank you to all of our presenters today and panelists, and to all of the partners that we have on this project. Their leadership and all of your leadership being here today is just so important to making this project successful. Thank you especially to our student leaders, Anais and Elise. As Dan said, you stand for the good that sports can do in our communities. Your leadership is truly inspiring. And frankly, much of what I was going to say in this presentation, you've already said much better than I ever could. So I think I can keep this pretty short. But I do want to talk just a little bit more before we end about practical tips and next steps that I hope that the audience can all take out of this meeting. I know that many of you are already deeply engaged in this work to prevent and address bullying and hazing and harassment on school sports teams and beyond. And our hope is that today's event and this initiative more generally will give you concrete resources to help you redouble those efforts moving forward. So to start with, some existing resources to make sure that you're aware of, and these are going to be, the first two are especially for the school administrators in the virtual room. First is the Attorney General's guidance to schools on addressing and preventing hate and bias, which provides legal context and practical tips to help schools fulfill their obligations to prevent and respond to hate and bias incidents. It also highlights best practices and contains a directory of relevant training and other resources. Second is a school hate crimes resource guide, which the commissioner mentioned, which came out of the governor's task force on hate crimes and was co-authored by our colleagues at Northeastern's Institute on Race and Justice and the Anti-Defamation League of New England, which will both also be partners with us on this project moving forward. So lots of good information in both of these and other resources that our speakers mentioned that we'll share with you. But none were specifically devoted to the unique elements of the school sports arena. So today, that's why we're announcing new programming and resources for school sports. The first is the AGO School Sports Guidance. The second, as the AG already mentioned, a late summer conference. And the third, as the AG and then Lisa and Dan talked about, some regional trainings in the fall. So first, we're issuing new guidance that is specific to school sports. The guidance provides a few basic tips for athletic directors, for coaches, for referees, and for other team staff. You know, in the Civil Rights Division, we do a lot of follow-up with schools after incidents occur. And this guidance is based on what we've seen and learned in terms of the way that problems are most effectively addressed and hopefully can be prevented in the first place. So it's really simple tips, and I love the concept Lisa brought up of reps, sort of practicing these things over and over again. First is just pay attention. It's an important part of the athletic staff role to watch out for problematic behavior, including the use of slurs, of inappropriate jokes, of insults, taunting, or other bias-related behavior. Second is just be the adult in the room. Be present with your teams and with your athletes. Don't leave players unsupervised in locker rooms or during team travel, and put a stop to problematic behavior when you see it. Third is provide leadership. This is just about taking those affirmative steps to build a positive team culture, including training about bias and hate in sports, and ensuring that students know where they can report problems, that they can report them to you, that they can report them to any trusted adult, and of course that they can report them through the established school infrastructure for reporting bullying, harassment, or hazing. Fourth is report problems, and this is the one that I think a number of people have touched on. It's so important that athletic staff and school administration staff have regular conversations about what's happening in the locker room and on the fields, especially where there's problematic behavior. Schools, of course, have legal responsibilities to address bullying and harassment, whether they occur during practice, during games, during team travel, and yes, even online. Athletic staff reporting roles are so important because schools that fail to identify and address problems may violate student civil rights. So prompt communication about anything concerning is always the best approach. And last, of course, athletic departments have particular responsibilities with regard to hazing to make sure they have compliant policies and procedures in place to prevent hazing, to advise students about their rights, and to report any hazing activity. So hopefully this gives you a bit of a jumping off point for sort of concrete tips, and we're looking forward to the next two pieces. A conference in the late summer or early fall. The location is to be determined, but we will have panels and speakers and workshops and opportunities for you to learn from each other about your experiences and also from experts in the field about best practices. And then we'll have the set of regional trainings led by Dan and Lisa and their team to help you dig deeper into how to create a culture of support and empowerment and address hate anywhere it comes up. You can register for the conference through the URL that we'll put in the chat. and we'll give you the additional information as soon as we have it. That'll register you for both the conference and the trainings. We'd also very, very much like your input on these programs as we develop them. And so we'd like you to take a few minutes either now or after this program to fill out our survey and help to put together the content for this initiative. So that's all from me for today. We're now going to transition to any questions that our audience might have. If you could please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen, and Elise, Ellis and I will help sort of direct questions to the speakers. First question from Martha at Silver Lake. Will the MIAA partner with Sport and Society and the AG to create a student-friendly course regarding implicit bias? The NFHS course is too geared for adults. Happy to turn that over to MIAA, but I guess I'll just say that we're more than happy to work with the MIAA on every aspect of this project. I'd say our first approach is to talk to the adults and provide some training and information to adults, but I think the sort of next step in it is making sure that the adults have the resources that they need to support the students. So I don't know, Bob or Mike, if you have any other comments on that.
I'll take it real quick. First and foremost, doing this today is modeling that we're not in this alone and we're in this together, which is very powerful. My whole career has been based on surrounding myself with people who are better and more talented than I am, and how can we collectively come together to address this issue. Secondly, yes, of course you want to reach your students, but I was used to say in a school setting that when there was a great play or something that took place, our kids were so good because our adults were so great. And I think we need to make sure that each and every one of our adults is trained and knows where they're heading, and I think our students will follow their lead. So yes, we're going to work together to create what we can do to make it even better. And secondly, we have to start with the adults to model these behaviors, and the kids will follow those expectations. I firmly believe that.
Abby, I would add that when we started doing this work, we had wanted to create our own video, but what happened, the NFHS created the free online course. And so in the interest of time and trying to roll it out, we went with that. But we did have plans to do our own. In fact, we have plans to do a video for offenders as well, to come into the office and take a live course at the Franklin office. But those are all in the future to be developed.
Great, next question. Does the AGO guidance address bias against student athletes with disabilities in sports? This one's from Joe Walsh. The guidance doesn't get to that level of specificity. It sort of talks about all protected characteristics, but we certainly recognize that students with disabilities have particular needs, and that bias may represent itself in particular ways in school sports. We've seen that in the AG's office in the civil rights divisions with complaints that we receive. So I will take that feedback as a suggestion that we should work into the conference something specific to students with disabilities, and I think that's a great idea. So we'll definitely take that suggestion. So next question comes from Jamel Adams. Is there a model that we can all subscribe to move all districts forward together? I'm gonna maybe point that over to the superintendents or to the MIAA. Maybe we'll start with the superintendent on that question. But what I'll just say briefly is that that's part of the goal of this initiative, is sort of all moving forward together.
Yeah, thanks, Abby. I think that's right. At the same time, I want to recognize that context matters a lot, matters a whole lot. So while the model may not be identical from one district to another, I think what we want to do is we want to identify a common framework that then can be modified for context. I think that's really the goal here, right? If there's a set of principles that we all believe in that are true, no matter whether you're on the North Shore or in the Berkshires or on the Cape, I think that ultimately is going to provide the best impact for kids across the Commonwealth.
I'll just reiterate something that Tim said earlier that I think is so powerful. It is time that there's a through line from an athletic director, a principal, and a superintendent. Whereas the context may be different throughout the Commonwealth, the continuity and the conversation and the core values and beliefs amongst those three entities have to be solid. And he said that earlier, and I think this has proven this year that there needs to be a true connection from athletic director through superintendent in dealing with this.
Great. We have a question from Stephen Hale. Is there training that school committees are receiving to support superintendent efforts and principal efforts to address and teach our student athletes around issues of hate and bias? Such an important issue, but we need vertical support to engage in this needed learning. I think that's a really great point, and maybe a reason to engage school committees, particularly in some of the programming that we have to follow. I'm not sure, Superintendent, if you have other thoughts about the role that school committees can play.
Yeah, I would say that, when we talk about superintendents and school committees, the issue is obviously much larger than just athletics, right? It's as a superintendents association, our key focus and priority area this year is addressing issues of racial equity, inclusion, diversity, right? And I think that whether that's on the athletic fields, whether that's in the classroom, whether that's just in as I said before, in how it's lived on the school buses and the lunchrooms, right? And so the work that as superintendents that we're doing in this association is to try to give our superintendents a set of tools to work more with their staff, but also work up to their school committees. And we've been engaged in conversations with NASC about this as well.
Great, thank you. We also had a couple questions just before we wrap that are really about accountability for districts or others that engage in this kind of behavior. Maybe I could speak briefly about the AG's office. Certainly, we are more than happy to support schools, and we usually take a supportive approach first when incidents happen, and are happy to hear from students and parents and others if they feel like they'd like our help getting that support. There are certainly legal obligations that flow from our anti-hazing law, from our anti-discrimination laws, from our anti-bullying laws to the schools. And we often find ourselves in a position of reminding schools of those responsibilities. And, in some cases, actually, making sure that they are fulfilling those responsibilities. So we take on that role. I think the Federal Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights takes on that role. And I don't know if the commissioner or someone else wants to speak to DESE's problem resolution system, but I think that's another avenue for reporting and accountability. Commissioner?
Yeah, so we have a problem resolution center in the department that is open and available every day, where people, parents in particular, but people from the community can reach out for individual issues, and they're welcome to contact us, and we try to resolve those on a case-by-case basis.
Great, thank you. Well, we are at time. We did have a couple of questions that we weren't able to get to this time, but I do want to highlight that the conference in particular will be an opportunity to really flesh out some of these discussions and talk more in particular contexts about how we sort of address these problems moving forward. And then the regional trainings will create even more space for you to talk with each other and work with each other on how to address these issues. So really appreciate this work on behalf of all of you. Encourage you to fill out our survey, which I think will help inform, I know will help inform the programming moving forward. Please fill out the registration link so we can get you on our list to tell you more about the conference and the trainings once we have that information. And you will be hearing from us. This is just the first step in, I think, a really important process for all of us. So we really appreciate your participation, and we will talk to you soon.